Okay, so we're doing the social context of schools this week, and I wanted to use this opportunity to discuss kind of what we building off of what we did last week, the historical role of schools. What role have schools played throughout history, serving different needs within our culture, whether it be inculcating immigrants to American ways and morals and values, etc., the American way of life, language learning in the same sense, through educating worker citizens. We briefly discussed Kennedy's role, specifically with the space race, how that affected schools. So now we're building on this. I will look at this as social perception, this current perception of what education is and what it should be, and what role it should play in a social context. What's going on? And this started because I read this book, Class Warfare by Stephen Brill. So you can see that. If you got nothing to do, buy this book and read it because it's interesting. A little lengthy, but it's an easy read because it's written by a journalist, so he kind of writes in a editorial style of, like, you can almost very small sections. You could burn off a couple sections a day and finish the book in a couple weeks, depending on your schedule. So what comes up in this book are two films that were also in the public eye recently. One is Waiting for Superman, which got a lot of press because of its attack on education and those supporting the attack, and how teachers responded. At least that's the sense I got in Pennsylvania. There was a huge outcry over this film from teachers. The other one is called The Lottery. Both are available on Netflix. The Lottery you can watch online, and Waiting for Superman, I think at this point you have to have the disc sent to you. So what this book talks about, and this is why I put the link to two different reviews of the book on the content section of D2L. I wanted to give two different points of view of a review of the book, because I didn't want to come off as a teacher. My initial bias is that these people are full of crap. They don't know what it's like to be in the schools. After reading his book and watching both films, I have a little bit different take on it. There are some valid arguments made. So the crux of the argument is this: that schools are failing, and historically has been teachers have been able to make the claim. And I made this claim myself. Unlike other industries, if you want to look at teaching as an industry that's supposed to put out a product, we can't refuse raw materials as other industries. So if you're making cars, and bear with me on this metaphor, if you're making cars and you're responsible to put out a very quality product, if a shipload of steel comes in and it's not of good quality, you can refuse that shipment and send it back to get good product, saying I can't build a good car with inferior steel or tires or whatever have you. We don't have that luxury in education. We are dealt the hand we are dealt. Regardless of what students walk through the door, our job is to teach them. So I always said it was a tough comparison to make, and we shouldn't be held to that standard of other industries because we don't have a choice over the raw materials, so to speak. And I hate to sound so cold, but that was a common thing. So this book starts out by tearing apart that assumption that no, it is the schools. Schools can, every kid can learn, and certainly every kid can. That's not the issue here. Is that there are so many complex factors: family, community, the popular culture's view on education is probably the biggest thing we fight against. And I've said this before too. And if you ask any kid, they'd rather be Bart Simpson than Lisa Simpson. Nobody wants to be the nerd. School isn't cool. That's a big part of our product, a big product of our popular culture for some reason. Geeks are geeks. I mean, there's a reason why there's that term, and it's because, for right or wrong, education is frowned upon. And I say that with an asterisk, because it doesn't mean, I mean, we all believe in education. But there's some kind of odd thing in our culture where school just isn't. Those who do well in school aren't the cool kids, right? Anyhow, enough of that. So the film The Lottery is basically, as discussed in this book, because of the failing of schools, we have this rise of the charter school movement. And charter schools, due to space limitations, have lottery systems. So if they only have 30 seats and 200 people want in, it is done by lottery. The movie The Lottery follows a handful of families through that process, why they want to have their kids go to different schools, why they think their school is failing, and then the heartache of trying to get into a good school, get their kids into a good school. Waiting for Superman is based on the same thing, that schools are failing children. Now, the issue then becomes, well, what? Because everything's based on the success of a school, and that parents don't have a choice living in bad school districts. If you live in a school district that has a bad school, high crime, whatever makes a bad school, the parents don't have a choice because they're restricted economically. They can't afford to send their children to private schools. That is a long ongoing argument. And if all kids got to go to a good school with good teachers, then they would be successful. Well, the crux of this argument is how do we define success? And I've asked you to tear this apart in discussions too. What is the role of school? Is it just to educate? Is it to create citizens? Is it to create? By and large, the underlying philosophy, all these arguments on whether schools are successful or not, is based on economics. We have if school children in Singapore have scored highly on math and science than the United States, then our children are going in through an inferior school system than the children of Singapore. These are these logical stepped conclusions. And again, if our students are doing worse on tests, then we will be affected economically. By and large, the argument made in the book, Class Warfare, and in both those films is that for our country to be economically strong, our children must be productive worker citizens, and they can't do that if the schools are poor.